Okay, hello and welcome to this Cricut tutorial. My name is Dinah Powell. I'm with the University of Southern Indiana, and I'm just going to walk you through the basics of getting started with a new project in the Cricut Canvas. So here we're already logged into Design Space. If you look at the PowerPoint, we have 4 quadrants here in the Cricut Canvas. So over here we have the left panel. At the top, we have the top panel. On the right, we have the right panel. And here in the center is our canvas. So the canvas is the most basic part. This is our canvas area. It just kind of gives us guidelines for how large of the project we are making. So here we have inches. We also have guidelines that kind of act as rulers if we want to get things lined up right. But that's basically where all our pieces, all our images and things like that are going to go. So here we'll kind of start with the left panel. This is where you're kind of importing any shapes, images, projects you want to create. So just kind of starting from the top here, we have new. This would just take you to a new project. So it would open a blank canvas like what we're looking at now. The second thing you have here is templates. So this can be really helpful, especially for programming. So if you go into templates here, you have a lot of options. This is particularly helpful, say, if you want to make t-shirts or something. If you're going to use iron-on vinyl, then you can put a template into the canvas, and that's basically just going to show you a size reference. It's not going to cut anything out, but it'll give you size references for these different projects. So if you, like, for instance, here you see a baseball t-shirt. If you wanted to do something that said Bears, it would give you the outline of the t-shirt, and then you could put your different pieces on there just to make sure the sizing is correct. I'm not going to put any templates on here right now, but we will go ahead and move on to the next item, which is projects, which is the third item in the left panel. This will show you a lot of pre-made items. You can also search for projects. So say you wanted to do something with an apple, you could do an apple lollipop holder. Say you wanted to do that as a, kickoff to the school year, and you wanted to give lollipops and nice notes. This would be a project you could upload. Anything with the green A, we will have access to as RAs in the Housing and Residence Life Department. We will have our own communal Cricut account, which will give you access to all of these little items with the green tabs. Which you can import these directly into Cricut Design Space as well, just by clicking on them. Basically, you can open them by hitting customize, or if you want to make it as it is, you can make it. These pre-made projects will give you dimensions, things that you're going to need. So making sure you have the right colors of cardstock, making sure you have some kind of adhesive, whether that's glue, a glue stick, a glue gun, whatever. Making sure you obviously have the candy to put into these little lollipop holders and things like that. In terms of starting something for yourself from scratch, you'll actually use the next function, which is shapes. So this you can play around with a lot. There's a lot of different functions with these. These are the pre-made shapes that we have, but you'll also have access to any of these that say they are included with the subscription. So you can make, crescents. If you wanted to make little awareness banners for certain months out of the year, you could do that. But those you can kind of just pull in and play around with. The next item on the left panel is also going to be the text button. So this is where you can go to make words. So let's say you wanted to do a door deck or something. You could have the option of cutting out letters for their names, or the other great thing, especially because we have the Cricut Maker 3, you can also go into the operations up here, which we'll be getting to in a minute. But you can also use this to help with that, because we have options for basic cutting, which would just make, cardstock letters of the D, I, N, A, and H. Or you could also do the pen function. These are going to be the main two that you'll be focusing on. The pen function means that it will be using a pen insert on the Cricut Maker 3 and actually tracing out letters. Now, if you struggle with handwriting or your hands cramp easily when you're writing on all these door decks, this may be a really great and useful function as you're going to make your door decks or other things or personalized items for your floor or apartment. So yeah. The next function we have down here are phrases. You're probably not going to use these a whole lot. They're similar to projects. But they also do have a lot of things that are, licensed. So, the Black Widow, Marvel things. Generally, you're not going to have access to be able to buy or purchase anything. So if it has any of these, prices on them, if they're not with the Cricut access label, you won't have access to purchase them. If there is something licensed that you would like to use, you can reach out to me at my email, and we can see about what we can do to get something like that or something similar. Generally, you're not going to be using the phrase function though a whole lot. The last function on the left panel is going to be upload. So here you can see where I've uploaded different clip art images or things I've found on the internet. And I basically tailored them to be able to use in Cricut Design Space, which is kind of an advanced function, so we won't go too much into that. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel here just so we can get back to our design space. So that kind of covers the left panel. Looking up here at the top panel, this is going to help us edit anything we currently have in the canvas. So I'm going to go back to the text function and go ahead and write my name again, just so we can play around with that a little bit. So as you can see here, my star that I put in, say I wanted to do a bunch of star door decks. It's a bit too small to put this name on as the size I want it right now. And this actually up here is going to help us with a lot of the functions and doing things in Cricut Design Space. So kind of the most basic thing right here in the top left are your undo and redo buttons. So if you mess up or you need to go back, that's what you'll use there. The second thing in the top panel is also going to be the operation. So operation is basically just saying what is the Cricut Maker 3 machine going to do. So right now the star is set to a basic cut, which as you saw me do right here, if you click on this little arrow, double arrow in the bottom right that is highlighted around your shape, you can use that to make it bigger or smaller. But back to the operation feature, that's just telling you what the machine's going to do. So you can also see the Dyna name label here is also on a basic cut. Like I said before, we'll probably want that on a pin feature, so that way it is being written and not actually cut out by the machine. In terms of this feature specifically, we can also go to the font tool, which is right down here. We'll also have access to all these Cricut font styles with the Access subscription. Generally, you want to make sure it says something that is available for single layer writing. So a lot of these just say cutting. You can also filter it into things that are available for writing. So this is, all things that can be done with a Cricut pen, which we'll show you how to do later. But as for right now, we'll look into this. So this is also telling me font size, the letter spacing, things like that. Another feature of the Cricut Design Space is all of these items up here. So select all would select everything you currently have on the canvas, deselect. The other option is edit. Generally, you can also do this just as a basic click and right click on your item. So if you wanted to copy and then paste to make a second star or something like that, you could. Duplicate also does that. Generally, just that's kind of the feature of the program. Another really helpful tool, especially say if you wanted to make stickers or something like that, or make a layered object, is this offset tool. And so you can actually just kind of make, a different function here. You can drag as to how large you want it to be. And that's actually just going to make, so let's say you wanted a 0.5-inch offset, and then you also have a curved or pointed kind of corner feature. But let's say you wanted to make a star door deck with a curved outline, you could do that. And as you can see, this is actually going to make 2 layered pieces of paper. Another function in the top panel up here is to change the color of your different items. Now this is only reflected actually in Design Space. It's not going to actually determine the colors of what your using when you go to cut out the mats, which we'll get to the cutting and preparing for the machine in a little bit. But we will go ahead and change the colors here just so it's easier for us to look at. So let's make a star with a red border. And once again, as you can see here, we have 2 different layers. So the machine is actually going to cut 2 mats which we would load with cardstock or whatever material we're using. It would cut 1 yellow and 1 red, or basically just whatever is loaded into the mat at that time. So it's not super important that your colors are exact, especially when you're just working in design space. But so we do have basically our star door deck here. One thing that is also useful, which is kind of our next tool, is the align feature. So this can be helpful for making sure things are centered. So making sure, if you do have a border on a door deck or something like that, that things are centered so that when you're looking at them here, everything looks correct. The other thing, so if we drag and highlight everything in our star door deck here, we can also look at changing the sizing. So right now the sizing is just kind of random because I've just kind of been sliding back and forth on the size. If you want something that is specifically a certain size, so say you want 5.5 inch, you could go up here and put in 5.5. Right now the proportions are locked on this door deck. So if you wanted to have them unlocked, you would hit this button here, and this means that the width and height are going to move independently of each other. So as you can see, if I make this height 2.5, it's going to squish the star down, which isn't what I want in this case, but can be useful for other applications. So I'm going to hit the undo button. The other thing that may be useful, especially if this is the way you want something, you can click the group tool, which is kind of skipping ahead to the right panel, but you can click group. So that way it's not moving as 2 separate pieces, rather it's kind of clipped together into one piece. Additionally, some other things that can be helpful are the arrange tool. So like an example here, we can see my name. If I try to drag it onto my star, it suddenly disappears. That is actually because it's underneath everything. So one thing we can do here is we can go to the arrange function and we can bring it to the front, which means it will be in front of everything. Another way to do that is if we go back here, you can also see the layers up here on the right panel. So this is going to be layers from what's on the bottom of your canvas up to what's on the top of your canvas. So the other option I would have is if instead of going to arrange, I could also just I could highlight, you see how this is gray over here, and just drag it up to the top, and now it's on top as well. I can also do resizing for text. So here now the name actually fits on the star. Again, if I wanted these all grouped together, I could group them again. I can also click ungroup to separate them. Keep in mind that if you have a group within a group, that's going to stay together. So it's not just going to ungroup everything you have selected. All right, in terms of the next function, so we kind of already went over the sizing tool. Another one back here is the flip. So for some reason you needed to reflect it down or up or anything like that, you could do that. The next thing is also the rotate tool. So this will kind of show you can rotate manually with your hand just by clicking this top right little circle with the arrow on it. But if you want something more exact, like say you want it exactly 90 degrees, you can go in and type in on the rotate tool. The last one on your upper panel is going to be position. I don't use this a whole lot, but I guess it could be useful. This is just going to say where it's at in terms of where does this top corner of your image align. So let's say I wanted to put it at the 5 mark and at the 5 mark again. Not super useful because this doesn't really impact where it lands when you go to cut the image, but just if you want to be super specific in where it is on the canvas, you could do that. So that kind of wraps up everything for the upper panel. The last panel we're going to look at is the right panel. So this is going to show us basically everything that's on our canvas. As you have more items, you'll have to start using this scroll down. But it basically shows us, you know, what's going on with all of our pieces. So you have the group function that we already went over, which is why our star is currently moving as one piece, but you can also ungroup things, which would make them separate pieces again. You can duplicate over here to basically just copy something. You can delete items. You can also just highlight things, see where they're at on the canvas, move them around. You can left click on these and do some of the same features that we saw on the top panel from over here. So copy, cut, paste, duplicate. You can move where they're at in terms of on top or behind things. The other thing you can do is if you hit Control, you can select multiple items and do different things with them. Another function of the right panel, I'm going to go ahead and center these again. Another function of the right panel that can be useful is especially some of these things down here at the bottom. So there's the slice tool, which is basically going to cut into pieces whatever you have selected. It can do up to 2 items at a time, so just keep that in mind. So here, as you can see, we just cut the yellow shape out of the red shape, and it gives me this border piece, and it also gives me the leftovers of what was behind the yellow shape when it cut things out. So let's just say I did just want, you know, a yellow star and a red border. I could delete this piece, and then that would be all that I have on my canvas. The other thing you can do is use a weld tool. So let's say for some reason I wanted to make this funky shape. It's going to make whatever the outline currently is of the items you have highlighted. And then when you click weld, now this is all one shape. I don't know particularly what you would use this for, but generally that's just kind of how the weld function works. One thing to note is that kind of once you've welded something, there's not a way to unweld it. So unlike how we had, you know, the group function where we could group and ungroup things, this is more permanent, especially once you've saved a project. Right now, I can use the undo tool to get rid of my weld, but generally once a project is saved, anything that is welded cannot be undone. Another interesting feature, which we'll get more into if we look at more complex images or layered images, would be attach, flatten, and contour. So generally, right now we can see we have a contour option. So this just turns on and off what parts of the image we're looking at. So, you know, as we know, we have this outline here, but if we select this, then it fills it in. And this is going to, again, be a tool that makes more sense when we're dealing with more complex images. But for right now, I'm just trying to give you a rundown of what all is in the Cricut canvas. And so I'm going to line these again, just so that this can give us some more options here. The other option is attach. So attach just means that these items are now going to be grouped together. As you can see, it changed the color. So attaching means that they're all going to be cut out from the same mat piece. So generally, if you're trying to use something with different colors, you're not going to use that. The other option is also to flatten. So this is going to, if you watch up here, this is also going to change your operation. So now instead of having 2 pieces, you can see it's all together now, but we also lost our outline. And the reason for that is because this is no longer a basic cut, is a print then cut, which is kind of like making a sticker or, you know, basically it is going to print out in these colors. So this specifically, you would want to make sure if you were going to flatten something, you'd want to make sure that the colors are correct in how you want them, because you'll be sending this to a printer and then you would be cutting it out on the Cricut machine. So that kind of covers, and then you can also unflatten. So this is similar to group where you can undo this function. So once we've done that, we can kind of go back to how things were. However, you will see that these are still on print then cut. Once you flatten something, it will want to be on print then cut. So if you're wanting to move back to a basic cut, you'll want to go back up to your operation section and hit basic. And again, this is also going to make you lose your coloring too. So if you want to reselect your colors, you can do that. But yeah, so that's kind of covering just the basic functions. The last thing you'll see over here on the right panel is the color sync option. So let's say you had, 12 or 13 different colors going on. You may decide, hey, I don't want to use 13 sheets of cardstock. So, if you had two very similar colors, then you could take, items from this panel and drag them down, and then everything would match whatever color you've dragged onto. So, but again, that'll be more applicable for more complex items. So that kind of takes us through all the panel functions. I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and then we will get back to the presentation. Thank you.